start again. It's a rich thing.
What's going on, everybody? It's the Bulls Show, aka Aiden, and welcome back to another video. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to be talking about how the Chicago Bulls have completely shifted over the past season, from last season to this season, and discussing which side of the coin would I rather prefer for this Bulls team. Now, a lot of people might not understand what I'm trying to say by that, and I think things will become a little bit more clearer as the video goes by. But one thing we can all agree on, this team is completely different from last season, and I don't necessarily think it's all in a good way, to be honest, as well, judging by our record, but there are still some things that you might be able to take away on a positive note for this Chicago Bulls team that we will be discussing in this video. Before we get started, please like and subscribe to the Bulls Show, turn notifications on, and let me know in the comments below whether or not you would rather prefer the Bulls of last season and what they were able to accomplish and their struggles, obviously compared to the Bulls this season, their struggles and what they've been able to accomplish. Now, you might be asking me, why is this Bulls team completely different from last season to this season? At the end of the day, a lot of players are very much here. Pretty much the Bulls are going through very similar injury crisis from last season to this season, and at the end of the day, we're still seeing the struggling moments that this Bulls team had. The Bulls collapsed in the second half of the season of last season. The Bulls have kind of collapsed in the first half of the season this season. There's a lot of similarities to this team, but I think the one that most people that I guess notice, and the one thing that really stands out for this team, is how the Bulls have completely transparently changed when it comes to approaching big games and beating big teams. Last season, our biggest problem was beating the best teams in the NBA. We did it on an odd occasion, of course, like most teams in the NBA would. They would beat good teams on odd occasions, but they could never consistently beat the good teams. They could never consistently find ways to overcome the strategy, the coaching, the players, the quality of different teams that are very, very good and competing. That's what we suffered last season. This season, our biggest problem is that we can't beat the lower caliber teams, or we don't beat the lower caliber teams. I'm not saying that we can't, because I believe we can, but the truth of the matter is, on a consistent level, we have not beaten the lower caliber teams. And I want to discuss what I think is actually better for the Chicago Bulls overall. And again, it's very interesting, and it both brings very different predicaments and very different frustrations as well. I want to kind of talk a little bit back on last year and how all of us were feeling it when we couldn't beat good teams, when we got blown out by the Celtics, when we obviously we lost to the playoff series against the Bucks, where we lost very significantly throughout February and March, when that was easily our most difficult stretch of the entire NBA season last year. And that was against a lot of good caliber teams, and we were frustrated. And the reason why we were frustrated is, the first half of that season, we were very much beating up on very low caliber teams, or teams that are not competing the way the Bulls should be competing. And we got very, very excited about this Bulls team based on a lot of lower caliber teams that we had beaten. Yes, we beat some good teams as well. We beat Brooklyn at that time. That was still very good for this Bulls team. Obviously, we beat Boston, I believe, once in that time as well. Again, we beat the good teams on occasion, but we never were able to consistently beat the good teams. In fact, we would lose very, very badly to those good teams. And it frustrated us because we thought we were going to be a contending team, or we thought we would at least be a competitive team. And against those big teams, we'd proved to be non-competitive. That was the frustration of last season. This season, our frustration is we play down to opponents' level. Again, I can list all the teams that we've beaten this year, and all of them are very, very good teams, or at least most of them are. We beat the Bucks a couple of times. We beat Boston a couple of times. We beat Brooklyn a couple of times. Again, those are all very, very good teams. We beat the Jazz when they were on top of the world as well. We've had some very, very dominating games in the NBA season, or games where we've been so proud of this team for the way that they've played and the way that they produce great performances. That's been a fact. This Bulls team has had a much better stretch already at this point in the season, beating good teams than where they were last season. But we've lost to the San Antonio Spurs, a team that is not necessarily known for how good they are at the moment, and they're looking for the future. Obviously, we lost to the OKC Thunder, a team that's looking towards their future. We lost to the Houston Rockets, at the time the worst team in the NBA. We lost to the Wizards. I'm assuming, look, the Wizards are probably not the best example, to be honest, because again, I do think they're a team that can, when everybody's healthy, it's a decent team. But again, for our caliber of where we were last year to this season, losing to the Wizards, it might be one that's considered a team we should be beating. We lost to the Magic as well, the buzzer beater to the Orlando Magic. Never forget that moment. That was really heartbreaking for this Bulls team. And obviously, I think there is one more that I'm really forgetting about, but the Minnesota Timberwolves without Rudy Gobert or Karl Anthony Towns. There are a bit of bad losses on this team, on these teams, and the easiest schedules for this team seems to be the ones that I'm worried about the most, because the lower caliber teams, we can't seem to find a lot of momentum against them. Now, the real question is, in terms of, I guess, what would I rather prefer? Because I've talked about the frustrations. Of course, beating a good team shows you got a lot of potential in the season. Losing to the lower caliber teams kind of shows that you're not really ready to be one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference or in the NBA in general. Where last year, you thought you were going to be something, but then you simply couldn't beat the teams above you. Or we couldn't beat any good caliber team, and that dragged us all the way down. Which one would I rather prefer? Now, I'm going to easily say I would prefer last year's Chicago Bulls just based on the fact that we had Lonzo Ball healthy and that everything seemed to click when we were really, really good and we kind of saw a unique style of play. But between losing to the good teams and beating the bad teams, or beating the bad teams and losing to the good teams, I would easily prefer where the Chicago Bulls are at the moment in terms of their record against the good teams. And here's the reason why. Beating the good teams shows that you have something about you. You may not be able to show it on a consistent level because this Bulls team is very inconsistent, of course. But beating the good team shows that when you're playing at your best and you're working hard, you're playing well together, and you can beat the top teams in the NBA on a consistent level, it shows you have something. There's something there for this Bulls team. And yes, we need trades to unlock it. Yes, we might need more coaching or unique coaching styles to unlock it. Yes, we might need guys stepping up to unlock it as well. But there is something there with this Bulls team that can be capitalized on. Compared to last season, we thought we had everything figured out, and in fact, it frustrated us because we could not get the job done against those good teams. And at the end of the day, when we made it to the NBA playoffs, it showed firsthand that we could not compete at the highest of the highest levels against some of these NBA teams. This season, our biggest problem is that we have to get to the playoffs, and the fact that we're losing to some of these games that are winnable, that's frustrating, of course. But let's just say we make the NBA playoffs and we verse a Boston Celtics, or we verse a Brooklyn Nets, or we verse a Milwaukee Bucks, the teams that we've kind of beaten already this season, or at least shown that we can be really competitive against. At the end of the day, it shows that maybe our confidence levels against those teams will be at a sky-high level. It shows that our ability to compete is there because we've done it in the regular season. Now, I'm not saying by any means we're going to be able to beat these teams in a 7-game series. Because at the end of the day, that's a whole different story in itself. Yes, you could beat them in a regular season series with injuries and whatnot, and it will definitely affect those teams. Just like it affects the Bulls when we have our players injured as well. But I'm saying is, if we're able to beat the good teams in a couple years' time, let's say next season, we continue to beat those good teams and we find a level of consistency and an identity and a style of play that everybody can follow suit for 82 games, and we can beat some of the mediocre teams as well, you all of a sudden are one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. Now again, I'd much rather prefer beating the good teams and losing to the bad teams than beating the bad teams and losing to the good teams. Especially how the Bulls did it last season. Maybe in a different scenario, the Bulls were just up and down like they were this season. I probably would prefer beating the bad teams because at the end of the day, you're expected to beat them. You're not necessarily expected to beat the good teams. But last season, we were on the highest of highs, going on massive win streaks, top of the Eastern Conference and whatnot, and then we suffered the lows of the lows and finished 6th. So again, I'd much rather prefer this situation now, where yes, we know we're inconsistent. We know this Bulls team is not all that all the time. We know that sometimes this Bulls team gives up, but in other games they show heart. We know sometimes this Bulls team likes to play isolation and hero ball, where in other games we play team ball movement. And I would prefer being in this situation, knowing what to expect, than going into a full NBA season with half the season at the highest of the highs, beating up on the bad teams, and then losing to every single good team imaginable going through the second half of a season. So yes, I would prefer where we are at the moment, but in terms of record, of course I'd want to be a better record. I think we should be a better record. I think we need to be a 500 team. I think we need to be an above 500 team, and I ultimately think we need to find consistency. So at the end of the day, it's kind of a difficult situation, a difficult question to answer. If you're kind of answering two different questions. I want this team to be consistent and to win games, but at the same time, I'd much rather a season like this where we're beating all the great teams and we still can't find our rhythm against the bad teams, because I don't think that's sustainable. Just like losing to every single NBA team last season, I didn't think was sustainable either, yet we somehow managed to do it. But when you're versing the lower caliber teams in the NBA, it's not sustainable to lose to every single one of them. You will eventually get your wins. I think it's a little bit more stability to find this season when you do verse the lower caliber teams. Last season, again, there was no real stability in this team outside of beating the bad teams. There was no real consistency beating the good teams. So, again, let me know in the comments below what you think, but I'd much rather prefer this situation for the Bulls. Altogether, though, the record needs to be better. Our style of play needs to be better. Trades need to happen. The front office needs to speak. Again, there is still a lot that needs to be done for this Bulls team by the All-Star break, by the trade deadline, and by the end of the season. And I really hope we can get things sorted in that area and maybe just find that consistency that we're looking for. Again, we shall wait and see. But there's still a lot of work to be done for sure. It was a lot of work to be done from the start of the season. I think, again, we're 4 games below 500 right now. I feel like we've been around that mark for about 3 or 4 weeks now. For about a month, I feel like, of our season, we're around 4 to 3 games below 500, or maybe 4 to 5 games below 500. We're kind of stagnating. We kind of are where we are right now. But with a hopefully an easier schedule coming up after this grueling one, we've got Philly and Boston next. Then a couple of games you might see as winnable coming up after that. Hopefully there can be some consistency found for this Bulls team and we can be able to fight back. But it really all starts after this grueling schedule. And so far, 2 losses to the Cavs. Both of them in controversial fashion. Both of them we should have really won realistically. And a win against Brooklyn. Let's see what we do against Philadelphia in the next game. But thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you're new. And I'll see you in another Chicago Bulls video. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay tuned for more. Take care and peace.